So we've all heard before that in order to build muscle in the most efficient way possible, you need to bulk. And while this is technically correct, a lot of lifters are simply not bulking correctly, and depending on where you're starting from, bulking can actually be ruining your physique and getting you further away from your fitness goals. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about why bulking can be detrimental to your physique, who should and who shouldn't be bulking in the first place, and if so, how should you be bulking? And lastly, I'm gonna get into some alternatives for those that fall into that should not category, but still wanna build muscle as efficiently as possible. So let's get into it. So first off, we must understand what a bulk actually entails. And it all comes down to your body being at a caloric surplus. To explain what a caloric surplus is, pretend this bottle represents the amount of calories you naturally burn on a daily basis. And water here represents the amount of calories you consume. A caloric surplus is when you end up consuming more calories than your body actually uses. And this excess, this surplus here, is known as the caloric surplus. Now, a bulk is when you consistently consume at a caloric surplus over a certain period of time with the intent to build muscle, or is it to gain weight? You see, that's where we have our first issue. You see, the first reason why bulking can be ruining your physique comes down to having unrealistic expectations of what your weight should eventually be. Now, there are many genetic factors that ultimately determine your weight. For example, if you have a smaller bone structure like me, you're just gonna be lighter than the average person, even at your dream physique. Take me, for example. I'm 5'6", 135 pounds, and even for someone who's 5'6", I am on the lighter side compared to my other 5'6" counterparts. Yet, there's a lot of pressure to be above like 185 pounds as a guy. Even now, you hear stuff like, if you're under 200 pounds, you're victim weight. So ultimately, this results in people fixating on their weight. So when they bulk, they end up focusing more on the weight rather than building muscle efficiently. And there is a key difference with that. And that difference is what brings me to the second reason why bulking can be ruining your physique, and that is fat gain. You see, when you bulk, the weight gain that you see isn't purely just muscle. A certain part of that weight gain comes from body fat. And if you're bulking incorrectly, like doing a dirty bulk or something, maybe a lot of it is coming from fat gain. I will say that a lot of people underplay the importance of being lean on aesthetics. While the controversial truth might be that being lean, so being at a low body fat percentage, just might be more important to aesthetics than building muscle as fast as you can. Let's use Sebum for example. On the left is when he's stage ready, on the right is when he's bulked up. You can see that he actually looks kind of bigger when he's stage ready despite being at a lighter weight because of the low body fat percentage. And yes, a portion of this can be attributed to his tan and good lighting on the stage and everything, but the biggest factor does come from his body fat percentage. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be sub 10% in order to be aesthetic. That's just unreasonable. However, let's say you're 20% body fat and you just started lifting. I will tell you that getting down to 15% body fat will do more for your aesthetics compared to just trying to bulk and build muscle as quickly as possible at 20% body fat. And again, this comes down to the visual benefits of being at a lower body fat percentage. Now, the third reason why bulking can be ruining your physique has to do with the emotional toll that bulking does to your mental health. Now, Brett Mossing made a really good video talking about his experience bulking and how it negatively impacted his mental health. I'm gonna link that video in the description, but long story short, a large part of being aesthetic has to do with being at a low body fat percentage, and when you see that you're not as lean as you were before, that can hurt your self-esteem and kind of lead to you developing body dysmorphia. And honestly, this can go beyond fitness because it's not like you're only gaining body fat throughout your entire body, but for some individuals, they can gain a lot of noticeable face fat as they reach a higher body fat percentage. And on top of that, if you're eating a lot of processed foods because you're trying to hit your caloric surplus needs, then you might be getting more acne than you were before. All of this isn't gonna positively impact your self-esteem, right? And me personally, I've struggled with acne for a very long time. I know what it can do to your mental health and how it makes you feel, which is exactly why I'm super excited to announce Tiege Hanley as a sponsor of today's video. So their entire motto is uncomplicated skincare for men. So they focus on actually simplifying the skincare routine process. And honestly, it's the best skincare system out there for guys like you and me. So if you're new to skincare in general, I recommend starting with their level 1 system, which comes with all the basics. You get a daily face wash to get rid of the dirt and grime on your skin, a 2 times per week exfoliating scrub to get rid of dead skin cells, an AM moisturizer with SPF 20, meaning sunscreen, because you always want to be protecting your skin from the sun. That is a non-negotiable. But of course, you don't need a sunscreen at night, so they also have a PM moisturizer to help your skin stay hydrated and healthy throughout the night. And then my favorite part of TH Hanley, because I like being informed about what I'm putting on my skin, is they even have an instruction card on what exactly to do with each skincare product so you're not confused. How much product to use, and what order should you use each product. They make it easy to have amazing skin, which is why I really like them. Now their products will definitely come in clutch while I'm out in Thailand. I don't have to worry about a single thing because I'm covered here. And on top of that, they have over 7,000 5-star reviews on their website from satisfied customers from around the world. So rest assured, I'm gonna be in good hands using these. And in addition to having amazing skin, members of TH Hanley get tons of benefits, including 20% off the retail price, the ability to customize your own box, exclusive monthly deals and you can pause or cancel at any time, and free US shipping and low cost shipping to most other countries. And because TH Hanley is sponsoring today's video, they're giving you guys, my viewers, an amazing deal. Just click the first link in the description and you'll get 30% off your first box, plus a free gift. So don't miss out. Click that link and let's get back to it. Now the last point I want to touch on is bulking can just make being consistent on your diet that much more difficult. Like, let's be honest, not everyone has the appetite to eat in a caloric surplus on a daily basis. And if you have to rely on force feeding in order to get your calories in, that doesn't sound healthy or sustainable either, right? Especially if you're a beginner, you want to make it as easy on yourself as possible just so you can focus on the habit of being consistent with training and committing to a healthier diet slowly. And I feel like for a lot of people out there, if you don't have someone guiding you, or maybe you didn't do enough research on how to bulk properly, for example, you might end up like burning out and just not being consistent with your fitness goals, or you fall into the trap of chronically bulking year round and wondering why like your physique isn't improving despite your strength going up. Now you might be thinking, all right, so then who should be bulking then? Well, I think if your goal is to build an aesthetic physique, the ideal scenario to be in if you want to bulk is 1, you don't have a lot of muscle, and 2, you don't have a lot of fat. So you're skinny and you're at a low body fat percentage. This is the ideal scenario to be in. Think of people like David Lade or me when I first started. Now keep in mind, if you fall into this category, that doesn't mean that you need to bulk in order to achieve an aesthetic physique. In fact, for me personally, over my almost 9 years of training consistently now, I've never formally bulked just because I wanted to stay lean throughout the process. And then the second scenario where I think it would make sense to bulk is if you're a power lifter and your goal is purely to gain strength and you don't really have aesthetic goals. And in that case, it does make sense to bulk. Now I know I've been negatively talking about bulking this entire video, but my goal isn't to villainize bulking by any means. If you are gonna bulk, this is what I would recommend. Set your caloric surplus to just 5% above your caloric maintenance. For example, if your maintenance is 2,500 calories, 5% would be an additional 125 calories on top of that, bringing you up to 2,625 calories. This is what many people would consider a lean bulk, and this helps to minimize fat gain while still allowing you to build more muscle. And if you think a 5% surplus is too small for a bulk, Wolf Coaching made a great video going over a few studies that compared bulking at different caloric surpluses. I highly recommend you check out this video because it is definitely pretty eye-opening. But TLDR, one study showed that across eating at maintenance, eating at a 5% surplus, and eating at a 15% surplus, the rate of muscle growth was pretty much the same across all 3 groups, except for biceps, which had more volume, which slightly favored the 15% surplus group. And then another study in that video showed that eating at a 350 calorie surplus as opposed to a 150 calorie surplus led to 5 times the amount of body fat gain. Yikes, that's a lot of body fat. So my interpretation from this is, 1, you don't really need to be in that big of a surplus in order to reap the benefits from bulking, and 2, the additional change that you get from increasing your surplus is mainly from fat gain. So that's who should be bulking and how I recommend you bulk, but let's talk about who should not be bulking. I'm gonna keep it super simple here. Anyone with a body fat percentage higher than what they currently desire should not bulk. This means if you're overweight/obese, then you shouldn't bulk, which I assume is somewhat obvious. But that also includes if you're skinny fat, you probably shouldn't bulk either. And again, I'm coming from the lens of trying to get aesthetic. If you're already at a higher body fat percentage, simply putting on more additional fat is going to be detrimental to your aesthetic goals. So then what would be the alternative then? Well, I think for most individuals, they're in the position where they need to lose body fat as well as build muscle in order to get to their dream physique. In that scenario, why not try doing both at once with a body recomposition? So what a body recomp looks like is essentially you're eating a small deficit. So on one hand, because you're in a caloric deficit, you're able to lose body fat. However, on the other hand, you're still able to have enough calories in order to progress on your lifts, so you're getting stronger week after week. And the idea there is if you're training close enough to failure and you're progressing on your lifts, you should be able to build muscle while being in this caloric deficit, albeit at a slower rate than if you weren't in a deficit. However, despite it being a slower process, I find that a lot of individuals who are at a higher body fat percentage can body recomp in a pretty substantial way. Many of my clients were able to do so, and overall it might actually be a more easier process to follow because the deficit is smaller, meaning it's closer to your maintenance and you're not doing something drastic with your diet. And then once you get to your desired body fat, if your goal is to put on more muscle, then you should either lean bulk or you can do the second alternative, which is main gain, which is essentially you're eating around your caloric maintenance. Going back to the same study from Eric Helms and colleagues that was covered in Wolf Coaching's video, eating purely at maintenance still allowed for significant muscle growth. And this was essentially the approach that I personally took. So lastly, if you're skinny and you're at a low body fat percentage but you don't want to bulk, main gaining can be a pretty good alternative. Now the big thing to keep in mind is your maintenance tends to fluctuate, so it's kind of impossible to eat exactly at your maintenance. What's likely happening is you're probably in a slight surplus some days and a slight deficit on other days, so over the grand scheme of things it tends to even out. But I think main gaining tends to work really well with intuitive eating, so that is eating without tracking when you're at a lower body fat percentage as well, because you can kind of trust that you intuitively eating is going to be roughly at maintenance and not like way above or way below. Now the final thing I want to say is my goal here is not to villainize bulking. In fact, it's not even to downplay the effectiveness of bulking, because don't get me wrong, bulking is the most efficient way to build muscle. However, it is not the only way. And depending on where you're starting from, I want to warn you that if you're at a higher body fat percentage and you think you need to get bigger and bigger and bigger, that is not always the case. So just practice common sense, do more research, train consistently, leave a like on this video, hit subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this to level up your physique. I'll see you on the next one.